being mindful and being in the present, it's like, we can basically redefine what it means to be a successful parent. If it's less about achieving some future oriented goal and more about how we show up to each moment, then we can really have a lot of successful moments.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode number 322. Today, we're talking about no more parenting stress with Jill Stoddard. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast, now with over 1 million downloads. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you've calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clark-Field's Mindful Mama mentor. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of Mindful Parenting, and I'm the author of Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Hey, glad you're here. I hope that you're doing okay today, and all is well in your world. You know, life is not easy, man. I think for every single one of us, we've had some things been going on in our family, like health things, and thank goodness for my meditation practice. That's all I gotta say for that. And we're hanging in there. We're staying through and enjoying the beautiful fall leaves here in Delaware. And I hope wherever you are, you're seeing the beauty. I think for me, when things get tough, that's one of the things I do is I say, okay, right here, right now, like where's the beauty right here, right now? What can I appreciate? And that really helps for sure. I've been leaning into my gratitude journal at night. Love that. And it really helps me to refocus on what's happening. And anyway, so I hope that all is well in your world and you are also focusing on what you can appreciate there. And we have a really insightful conversation for you today. Jill Stoddard is the director of the Center for Stress and Anxiety Management. She's an award-winning teacher, TEDx speaker, author, and co-host of Psychologists Off the Clock podcast. And we're going to be talking about anxiety. We're going to be talking about acceptance and commitment therapy and really like living a full size, not fun size, not Halloween candy size life. So we're going to be talking about how we can get off of that, achievement failure cycle, world that our culture pushes on us so much and really how to we're talking about acceptance and commitment therapy and how it can help us, how it can expand that window of tolerance and really let us lean into the fullness of life, which is not always easy, man. It's not. So that's why I've got Jill on here today to talk to us all about it. Before we dive in, I want to remind you that the Mindful Parenting Teacher Training Program is enrolling now for February when the group gathers together, but it's enrolling now and early bird ends this week. Early bird tuition break ends this week if you have to apply before November 18th to get that. And it's the teacher training program is for you to take mindful parenting to your local community. We really give you everything you need. So if you have the passion, you have the drive, and you have the interest, we give you the course. We teach you how to teach it. We teach you how to gather your class together. And, it's really creates this amazing possibility for you to really step into the mindful parenting work more deeply than ever and really a very clear and easy to follow pathway to bringing it to people in your community, which is so, so cool. So if you are interested in applying to that program, go to mindfulparentingcourse.com/teach. That's mindfulparentingcourse.com/teach. And now join me at the table as I talk to Jill Stoddard. And you ask a great question in your TED Talk, which I think is so cool. So you ask about basically what is the goal of parenting? And, so I'm like, okay, the goal, I want to raise happy, healthy, emotionally adjusted kids, and then you say, like, and if you could basically reach that goal by magic and just, like, I could snap my fingers and the result is, like, you could have a perfectly well-adjusted 30-year-old, would you do that? So I loved that question, and I was wondering if you could tell us why you asked that question, just kind of bring us in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I think, the really the point of the TED Talk is how it's so natural for us in this culture, especially in Western cultures, to be really focused on outcomes, goals and outcomes. But the problem is we don't have a lot of control over that. The part that we get to control is the choice that we make in this moment right now. And it's essentially like like a cliche. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. But the TED Talk expands that in a lot of ways, because I don't think so. For as difficult as parenting is on a day to day or even moment by moment basis, none of us would give our kids away and take them back at 30, even if that meant they were perfect, whatever perfect means, because we do really get that it's about the moments that we're spending with them that really matter, like even when so many of those are so difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I really got that from your TED Talk. And it was like, yes, yes. I mean, my daughters are now 11 and 14. And so it's like, I only have maybe 4 years left with my oldest daughter living at home with me. And so it's like, oh, it is the moments, even if she's like a grumpy, like miserable teen at the time, like, I would definitely, yeah, I would never trade that for the
Right.
perfect 30-year-old. I think that's such a helpful point, and this idea of kind of being in the present moment, and this idea of it's like this being in the present moment is this a sort of antidote to the achievement failure cycle, and it's kind of like you're well, maybe you could just tell us a little bit more why that's so important and what does that achievement failure cycle do to our brains as
Mhm.
parents?
Right. Well, I think in relation to that focus on outcomes and goals, is this is really how we define success. Like I set a goal, and maybe that goal is that my kid gets into a particular college. Um, Although that's really a goal for someone else. That's not even a goal for us, which makes it even less out of our control. But there's this idea that, like, we set a goal, we take steps to achieve it, and if we get that outcome we're shooting for, that makes us a success. But the problem with that is, there's a couple different things. One is this idea that, like, we really are not in control of many, many outcomes. So let's take jobs, for example. You could fill out lots of applications, but whether you actually land the job or not, there's many, many factors that go into that that may have very little to do with you. And so, if we define success as our ability to achieve outcomes, then we're setting ourselves up for a lot of failure when when our goals are really outcome driven. And you can see how much this relates to parenting, because there's so little that's in our
Yeah.
control when it
Yeah.
comes to those kinds of things. And so being mindful and being in the present, it's like, we can basically redefine what it means to be a successful parent. If it's less about achieving some future oriented goal and more about how we show up to each moment, um, then we can really have a lot of successful moments. Like we can choose, I like to call it the me you want to be in each moment. And if you think about the word moment, like the letters that spell moment, the word me sits right inside the middle of the word moment. So it's an easy thing to remember. Who's the me I want to be in this moment? But also, mom is in that word. Who's the
Mm-hmm.
mom I want to be in this moment? And that, we get to decide who shows up. And what happens when we're not being mindful is we're on autopilot, right? um and so for me that often looks like at the end of the day feeling grumpy, feeling irritable. And so if I'm on autopilot, I'm snapping at my kids and I'm not showing up as the mom or the me that I want to be in that moment. But when I'm present and when I'm mindful, when I'm aware that my shoulders are tense and that I have a column of anxiety going from my throat to my belly, which is where mine shows up, and I can kind of open up and take a breath, then there's that space between a trigger like my kids fighting. That's the big one for me, as I'm
Mhm.
sure it is for many of the listeners. And how I choose to respond. It's creating that space of choosing to respond rather than reacting. And if I just constantly think like me, I want to be in this moment, or mom, I want to be in this moment, it helps to remind me to take that pause to be able to choose that response. The choice is really the most
Huge.
important
It's
thing.
the most
Yeah.
important thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you you're saying all the things that we talk about and
Right.
I talk about in Raising Good Humans, which I love. And um wh- were you trained to be like achievement oriented and goal focused, or were
Oh
you
God.
in
Yeah.
a more process oriented family growing up?
No, I was definitely in an achievement oriented outcome, type of success family and grad school. I mean, I think everything that I have done or been exposed to has really been more of that outcome, results, achievement oriented environment. And it wasn't until I found acceptance and commitment therapy in graduate school, because even other kinds of therapies tend to be focused on an outcome of getting rid of panic attacks or
Mm.
something of that nature. And acceptance and commitment therapy is focused more on what are your values, who's the me you want to be, and how are you going to choose to show up to each moment mindfully, open, aware, um, and willing to experience the discomfort that can come along with some of those things. And that was, I mean, ACT was just a complete game changer for me.
I'm excited to talk about ACT, but I want to kind of jump back to one thing you said, which is this idea of even these or other therapies were focused on kind of like the outcome of getting rid of panic attacks. And what I've noticed is that, like, that cliche of what we resist persist is really true. And
Yeah.
that sometimes in mindful parenting we teach tools to take care of our difficult feelings, and sometimes we engage with those tools. Even when we start to engage with those tools, even just with the intention to just get rid of those feelings, those difficult feelings, like the intention you said, the therapy of the outcome, getting rid of panic attacks, like they can just be even stickier because of just that
Mhm.
intention to get rid of. And I wonder if that's something you saw, in the work that you did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my favorite metaphor for this that I think when people hear it, it's like this aha moment, like, oh, of course, is, if you think about if I were to hook you up to, say, an anxiety or stress detector machine, it's like a lie detector, but
Mhm.
um it detects your stress and anxiety. And I say to you, whatever you do, just don't get anxious and you'll be totally fine. But if you do get anxious, it's going to deliver a lethal shock and you're going to die. But just don't get anxious and you'll be totally fine. Right? You're laughing because
Ugh.
you know that that is a sure prescription for death, right? And it's not because the stakes aren't high enough, because our lives are, the thing that we're most motivated to preserve. But if you think about what that means, you're now telling yourself about anxiety is you're saying, "Oh my god, this is bad. It's terrible. It's dangerous. I have to get rid of it. If I don't get rid of it, I'm going to die." And that's
Mhm.
precisely what people do with stress, anxiety, panic. A lot of the emotions that we have that are uncomfortable that we prefer not to have, we start to tell ourselves that they're bad and they're dangerous and they're terrible and I have to get rid of it. And so now you're anxious about the anxiety, so you're anxious. So it's this paradox that as long as you're unwilling to have it, you're going to have it because
Mm.
you're anxious about anxiety, you're stressed about stress. And so then people will ask me, okay, great. So then if I'm willing to have it, then will it go away? Like, well, not quite. If you're unwilling to have it, it will be set on high no matter what. If you're willing to have it, then your emotions will do what emotions do, which is wax and wane and go up and down. And, because we're human beings and that's just the deal.
Mm. Yeah, that's so helpful. I mean, as long as you're unwilling to have it, you will have it. And so it's asking a lot though, because that's kind of the basic human response is aversion or attraction, right? Like that's like the
Mhm.
basic animal response to kind of everything is like I'm attracted to this or I'm averse to this. And so we kind of move towards or we move away from things. And so we're asking ourselves to we're practicing and training ourselves to not be averse to something that feels uncomfortable, right?
That's exactly right. And where this is a difficult training to participate in because we are evolutionarily programmed if you're having panic or anxiety, that is your body saying you're in danger. You
Mhm.
need to flee, right? And the problem is there's a lot of false alarms in terms of it's a perception. All you need is a perception of danger to feel panicky or anxious, but it doesn't mean the situation is actually dangerous. And in fact, um, and I think this is the most important thing I've learned in my own experience and that I really love to impart on other people is when you think about the stuff that makes you stressed or anxious or worried or whatever it is, like think about the last time you were laying awake at night because we've all had that problem, right? Like in bed and the wheels are spinning is like what were you worrying about? And I bet you weren't worrying about whether there's going to be a season 2 of your favorite Netflix drama. Even though you might love that, even though it might be a great escape, it's not what you worry about because you don't
Wait,
care
no,
about
I want Bridgerton to come back. No, I'm just
it.
kidding.
You do, but do you worry about it at
No, no,
night?
no, no.
No, right? So you can like love it and get a lot of joy of it. It's not keeping you up at night because it's not the thing you care about. The thing that keeps us up at night are our kids and partners and jobs and friendships. And it's the stuff that matters to us. And even if someone said, well, that's not what I worry about, I'm just worrying about the fact that I can't sleep. Okay, but why? What's so bad about you not being able to sleep? What are you afraid will be sacrificed tomorrow if you're not getting a full night's sleep? And then that's about work or family or relationships. And
Mm,
and so we have these emotions that are telling us run and hide, danger, danger. When in fact, but that's a false alarm a lot of the times, when in fact, what they're really telling us is this is like a bright red neon arrow pointing at exactly what you care about. Because
mm,
if you didn't care about it, you wouldn't feel stressed or anxious about it.
mm. And
And so
so
instead, like that's a good reason or a good motivation to maybe consider leaning in
mm,
instead of that instinctual running away.
yeah, yeah. I think that we're kind of trained by our society to be comfortable, right? And
Yeah.
so we run away. And what you're saying is that like this pain, this difficulty is saying this is really important to you. So like
Mhm.
it's kind of like I love what Jill's doing here. She's inviting us to reframe your difficulties as something that is this is something that's important to you. This is like where you get into like where your values are and what matters to
Exactly.
you, right? And that's then circling back really important in the acceptance and commitment therapy, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I tell people that they don't like this information very much, but I've been doing ACT myself. I do it with clients, but I also practice it in my own life and it's been just over 20 years. And I feel more anxious now than I've ever felt in my life. But the reason for that is because I play big, like I live big. It makes me
Mm.
nervous to do podcast interviews, right? You're like putting yourself out there for people to potentially judge you. But one of my main missions in life is to try to spread the word about ACT as much as I can because I know how much it's benefited me and I know that it can benefit other people. And I want that information to get out there. And this is one of the ways I do it. Now, if that feeling of discomfort, that fear of being judged, for not coming across competently or whatever the case may be, interestingly, if I let that dictate my choices, I wouldn't be here right now.
Mhm.
Right. And so a lot of the things I choose to do are things that make me anxious, but they also make me feel really alive.
Mhm.
And so it's this like saying yes to the stuff that lights you up, knowing that a lot of times those are the exact things that are going to scare the heck out of you.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. We are supported by the amazing skincare of Osea Malibu. So I find it really hard. I'm not like a amazingly creative gift giver, and I find it really hard to find perfect gifts for my loved ones. And I try to think of something personal, but that I could actually buy for multiple people in my life. And so I am so psyched because body care and self care essentials are honestly the perfect choice. And so this year, I'm getting my friends and family Osea, the amazing cult favorite skincare line that you've heard me talk about here before. Osea has been making products that are clean, vegan, safe for your skin, safe for the planet for 25 years. When it comes to clean beauty, Osea is the pioneer. They have award-winning skincare, body scrubs, wellness products, and body treatments, and their Andaria algae oil has been a celebrity favorite and my favorite for years. Well, it's amazing. It smells so good. It like comes on makes your skin glow. I love it so much. They have a ton of great gift set options at different price points, and they all look and feel super luxe. They almost don't even need to be wrapped because the glass packaging is so beautiful on its own, and it's more sustainable than plastic. So if you only want to share the best with your friends and family, Osea is really the perfect gift for anyone. And listen, while you are shopping for others, I encourage you to give yourself a little self-care too. And I know we talk about this on the podcast, right? Like, why are we afraid to take good, high quality care of ourselves? And this can be a way to do that, honestly. That moment in the morning when I am putting on the atmosphere protection cream and it feels so perfect and light and clean and moisturizing, and it smells so lovely. It's like this way of just being kind and nice to myself. And we need to do that, right? We need to treat ourselves with the same care that we treat others. And it makes your dry winter skin so soft. And remember, all the products, they're vegan, they're cruelty-free, they're climate neutral. They're created with sustainably sourced seaweed. They're made in California. You can feel really good about what you're putting on your skin. It really is an amazing choice to just upgrade your skincare with sustainable, quality, lovely products. I highly recommend it. This holiday season, stock up and share your new favorite clean skincare and body care with your friends and family. We even have a special discount just for our listeners. So get 10% off your first order with the promo code MINDFUL at oseamalibu.com. You'll get free samples with every order, and orders over $50 get free shipping. And gifting is always easier if you start early. So head to oseamalibu.com, oseamalibu.com. Use the promo code MINDFUL. Yes, that's totally true. I can relate with all the things you're saying too, because I do all these interviews for raising good humans, and it's like sometimes it's like you're on like morning TV and like they're like, okay, respond right away, and that's I definitely feel like the pulse racing and all those things there, and I have to kind of take time to recover from that, but it is something that is incredibly important to me. Yes to all of that. So it can,
Mhm.
you're pointing to this fact that it can allow you to do some things that maybe just trying to be comfortable won't, like if you're just in your comfort zone, you're not going to be able to do these things that will help you live life as fully as possible.
Yeah, it's never where growth comes from.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the comfort zone. We should all spend a little bit of time there with our Netflix and our comfy blankets and our cups of tea or wine or what have you. but it's not really where like growth and energy and those kinds of things come from.
So can you take us back, Jill, to like kind of your own story before you found ACT and kind of what you were struggling with as far as your anxiety?
Mm. Well, I think I found it in graduate school in my first or second year of my PhD program. And during that time, I mean, it was just an incredibly difficult but wonderful training program. Um, there was a lot of stuff going on at home. My parents separated, my mom had started drinking, and I'm trying to get a PhD working, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for 4 years or something like that. And so I think that's where I never really struggled with anxiety before
Mm,
then. And in fact, when I was in graduate school, my friends, my classmates, would talk about being really like overtly scared, anxious, freaked out about different things going on. And I would kind of have this smile on my face, like, I don't know what you're talking about. This isn't that big a deal. Like, I feel fine. And then the next day, I'm in the ER with the worst migraine I've ever had. So it was in grad school that I actually developed like debilitating migraines. I mean, I would have a horrific migraine every single month. And um, that was because I was not practicing acceptance or willingness, as it's called in ACT. I was stuffing all the stuff down related to graduate school and my mom and my parents and stuffing, stuffing, stuffing. And I really think this was the cost that it all came out physically
mm,
instead. And um, once I was really able to learn ACT well enough that I was able to apply it to my own life, that really shifted a lot. Where then I could, sort of experience actual anxiety and recognize like this is worry. Um, that I mean, it's mostly worry for me, and then that kind of constant, like, anxiety that settles in the chest, not panic or anything like that. Um, and really what it boils down to is being able to change my relationship to those experiences, being able to, like, acknowledge that this is, either a sign that this is something that's important to me, or, sometimes your emotions are a call to action too, right? Like, sometimes guilt means you've done something wrong that you need to make amends for. Sometimes anger means there's been an injustice or you've been wronged in some way. I think I just got better at being able to really pay attention to what is this trying to tell me? And instead of just shoving it away, can I really like open up and make space for this to be present and then focus on choosing my life and letting my life be exactly as I want it to be, even when this pain is along for the ride.
mm. It's really like it's a lot of mindfulness here. It's like awareness of this is what I'm feeling. This is where I'm feeling it. I'm not running away from it. I'm just looking at it. And you talk about that acceptance, right? Like that's the A in ACT is like that acceptance of this is what is right now. I'm accepting the reality of what is here in the present moment. And that's like the biggest hurdle for a lot of people, right? To just accept that that right now I feel irritated. Right now I feel resentful. Right now I'm not like totally I don't like my kids that much at the moment.
Mhm.
To like accept those um those unpleasant, unsavory, difficult parts of ourselves. This is one of the biggest pieces, right? Is to and hurdles. And so how in acceptance and commitment therapy, how do we get to this acceptance part? Like
Yeah.
how do you walk people through this?
Sure. Well, I think first of all, I want to say one thing in response to what you were just talking about, which is what the word that kept coming to me as you were talking about was the non-judgment part of
Mhm.
mindfulness.
Mhm.
Because and that right when you said, maybe right now I don't like my kids that much, and that we're so quick to judge ourselves for our feelings when we don't control our feelings. Feelings just happen. Like that's part of being human. And I think that non-judgment part of mindfulness and acceptance is critically important. And the first time that really like it like hit me like a ton of bricks is when I was first learning about mindfulness again in grad school. And I thought I'm going to like test this out because I wasn't really sure. I wasn't getting it. Skeptical, right? And I used to take the bus in the winter and it was not a pleasant experience. And I was waiting for the bus. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna like try to ride this bus mindfully because go big or go home. And I'm waiting in the freezing cold and I'm like noticing, that my ears hurt. And I'm noticing every time I breathe in that my nose freezes. And as I breathe out, it unfreezes. And several buses drive by me and don't pick me up because they're full, because the colder it is, the more full the buses get. And I noticed, that feeling of almost like desperation and et cetera. So then I get on the bus and now it's like 80 degrees and I notice the sweat dripping down and I notice my leg muscles tensing as I'm trying to surf because I'm too short to reach the handle and it's very crowded. And what I noticed was that this was not suddenly like, wow, I love riding the bus because mindfulness just makes everything amazing. What I
Rainbow
noticed,
sparkles.
rainbow and sparkles. But what I noticed is that it made it far less unpleasant. And
Mm,
that the reason for that was because the experience was just what it was, not all the stuff my mind would normally judge it for being. This is awful. This sucks. Why is this bus so crowded? Why does the temperature have to change? This is right. Like all that stuff you tell yourself about the experience
mhm.
is, I think, what really causes more suffering. And that when you can just be with the experience, even when the experience is unpleasant, without judging it, that makes such a big difference. And I have found that to be particularly helpful as a mother because there's a lot of parenting that is so difficult and that we layer so much judgment onto that when you just show up to the experience, it doesn't mean changing diapers is going to be rainbow and sparkles, right? But
Yes.
it makes it a far less unpleasant experience. Thankfully, I'm years out of diapers, but just as an example.
Yes, yeah, or the car seat. Like you can celebrate when you like get rid of that big enormous car seat that you have to lug around everywhere, but if you can
Right.
not fight and resist that it has to happen and just accept that it has to happen every single time, then you're not suffering. I mean, that kind of goes to
Right.
that equation, pain times resistance equals suffering, right? So we're going to
Right.
have pain, life has pain, like that we are sensing human beings, we're sensing animals. Life is going to have pain, life is going to have difficulty, and what Jill is saying is that is we can let go of that resistance and accept this. We're kind of taking away this whole layer of suffering of like, oh, and what's wrong with me that I'm so grumpy right now because I'm in the cold in the bus, waiting for the bus. And why can't, this whole layer of like commentary that just what the brain does that just isn't helpful. So
Exactly.
do you have a meditation practice? Are you practicing mindfulness in everyday life, or what, how do you?
So for me, early on, I tried to do a more formal meditation practice, but it was grad school. It was like the worst time to try to do that because there just really literally was absolutely no time. There was barely time to sleep. Um, and so in recent years, I go through kind of spurts where I'll do like 10 minutes a day, but I've never been like a 45-minute a day meditator. But what I prefer is mindfulness in everyday life, but I do this in an active way. So, not just I'm going to pay attention to whatever's going on. And this actually answers your question about how do we practice willingness? Because these two things go together. Like, how do we get this muscle stronger for accepting stuff that we don't want to accept? Now, if I told you, like, just like suck it up and make space for your anxiety, I mean, that's ridiculous, right? Nobody could do that, and therapists would be out of a job. And I think this is a muscle that needs to be strengthened over time, and we start with practices that are like relatively benign so that you can actually get a sense of mastery. So one of my favorite things is, for example, if you are a woman who shaves your legs or a man who shaves their legs. If you're a person who shaves your legs, when you get in the shower, you have a ritual for how you do this. You do your right leg first and then your left leg or vice versa. You start in the front, you go around clockwise, etc. If you completely switch that up, so now you do your left leg first and you start in the back and you go from back to front to side, not in order. First of all, this forces you to be present. It kicks you right off autopilot and you are there. I guarantee you're not worrying about the meeting that you have later
Mhm.
because you have to focus. But you also are practicing, or it's an opportunity to practice willingness because you will feel weird. And right, it's awkward, it doesn't feel right, it's not how I want to do it. And you'll also notice an urge to go back to your normal way. And if you can really notice that experience of I just want to go back, that's the thing we always respond to when we
Mhm.
end up diving for our comfort zone,
Mm.
even if it's pulling us away from something that's important in our lives. Now, shaving your legs, it doesn't matter, but it's just a practice. And so if you can notice that urge and make space for it and keep shaving your legs in a bizarre pattern, then you're starting to build that muscle. And there are a million fun ways to do this.
I just got this image of like all these like people walking down the street with these like wacky shaved legs, like in zigzag patterns. Like, we're just practicing what Jill said to do. We're doing a mindfulness practice. I love this. What else can kick us out of that autopilot comfort zone?
Yeah, so I'll give you like a couple of my other favorite
Okay.
practices. If you're someone who carries a backpack or like a purse on your shoulder, just put it on the other shoulder and your chiropractor will love you because they want you to do that anyway. For me, I have a podcast too, my Psychologists Off the Clock podcast. And we did a practice together, my guest and I, where we both took our glasses and put them on upside down, right? Because now they feel
This is where you
funny.
want the video portion of the
Yeah, we
podcast if
don't
you're
do
listening.
video for my podcast, so this will be good for your YouTube. So they feel wrong and funny on my face. My prescription is different in the lenses, so now I can't see very well. And I have a strong urge to put them back the other way. But like this is something where I could sit and spend some time just noticing how all of that feels and
Mm,
choosing to make space and not respond to the desire to put them back.
mm.
My most favorite one, and this is a great one for parents because you can do this with your kids. And I actually have a video of doing this with my kids on my YouTube channel, is to take bean boozled jelly beans. Have you heard of these?
Oh, is it like the one it's like the Harry Potter ones where they're like
Yes.
there's like the snot flavor and there's
Yes.
rotten egg and oh, I love giving my kids
So
those.
if you get the full game, the game comes with a spinner
Oh, yeah.
and you spin it and it lands on like the white jelly bean. And you just have to pick a white and eat it. And it's either going to be buttered popcorn or spoiled milk, and you don't know. And so what I like is like first do this the way you would normally do it. Don't worry about being mindful, don't worry about acceptance. And what that means is you're going to eat it with your face scrunched up. You're going to have all this like dread and anticipation and you're going to resist it in all the ways we resist anticipating a disgusting flavor in our mouth. So do that and then do it willingly where you're kind of coming at this with an open stance. You're curious, you're noticing the anticipation. You're noticing, maybe some dread about what this could be. And then you're biting and you're noticing the saliva and the flavor as it rises, and maybe a feeling of disgust, maybe a feeling of relief, but you're not scrunching up your face. You're not spitting it out. You're just opening and allowing the experience to be whatever it happens to be. And remembering the reason this is my favorite is they're just jelly beans, right? You're not really eating vomit or skunk. You're just eating jelly beans. So it's this kind of like safe and benign way that you can really like stretch your ability to allow discomfort.
I l
Um, and it's fun. And
I love this, it's so funny because like, my kids are completely resistant to all things mindfulness because their mom is the mindful mama mentor, and so but I think they would do this. I think this might be one that they would try.
especially if you're going to do it with them.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the thing is the kids want to see the parents do it. And do you know I actually did this as an adult, like probably 4.5 to 5 years ago with my own mom. So
Mm.
she was, 60 something. And it was actually, we didn't know this at the time, but it was very shortly before she died.
Oh,
And I
wow.
have all these videos of my adult brother and my sister in law and myself and my mom playing this Bean Boozled game, and it is like one of my most cherished possessions to have these videos to just, and we weren't doing it mindfully, we were just doing it
Oh,
as, the silly game. But the best part of it was the fact that my, like, 66 or 67-year-old mom was willing to play this game to have fun with her children.
oh,
So
oh.
if you can combine that with, like, a mindfulness willingness practice, it hits all the, the spots.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that, Jill. I think that's wonderful. I mean, yeah, that's like that just kind of like accepting and allowing what arises. Like I feel like that's what you do in every meditation session, like even whether it's 5 minutes or whatever, right? Like you sit and your mind wanders and you think about what you're going to do later and then you have a feeling that arises and all that stuff comes up and it's like building a muscle of non-reactivity, right? Which is like
Right.
this is like what we need as parents is this muscle of
Exactly.
non-reactivity, right?
Yeah. And
Um
I really think that important piece, it's not just noticing the taste of the jelly bean or the feeling of the glasses, like it's noticing the moment you really want to flip to something.
mm,
You really want to
mhm,
escape. You really want to spit it out.
mhm,
Because that's that thing we respond to.
mm,
And if we
mhm,
can make space for that, or even just like make the moments of experiencing that and noticing it a little bit longer, as we were saying in the beginning, so now we're choosing how to respond instead of being on autopilot or reactive, it's incredibly powerful. And I encourage people to think of their own fun ways to do this. I mean, almost everything we do in kind of a ritualistic way, right? Like, or just brush your teeth with your non dominant hand, or do the top before the bottom if you normally do the bottom before the top. You can listen to like the sound of jackhammers on YouTube or crying babies. If you think about your senses, your five senses, just pick anything, music you love, music you hate, and
mm.
practice listening to it in a resistant way, like, oh, shut it off, I hate it, stick my fingers in my ears. I have that response to music by the Cars and Heart. There are just certain bands I like, but if I listen to it mindfully and I just notice the drums and then I notice the guitar, it's like a totally different experience. So those are
Mm,
the ways I really like practice everyday mindfulness rather than doing kind of like a separate meditation practice. And I have found that it's helped me be able to apply it, because it is so applied
mhm.
then in my everyday experience.
Yes, I love this. These are great like practices of mindfulness in everyday life. I'm a firm believer of both.
Mhm.
both the formal practice and these informal practices, but yeah, yeah, this would be interesting. There's certain music though. My husband makes electronic music and he's like really into like this like weird he's really into like strange experimental electronic music and like occasionally they have, like, some music where they play these, like, high-pitched, like, sounds that are literally painful to my ears, like, I don't think he even hears them, like, we have different registers, and I'm just like, "Ow, like, this is to stop," and he's like, "Ah, so judgmental," and I'm like, "I'm sorry."
You'll have to try it as a mindfulness
I guess I
practice.
will. I will have to breathe through that and relax into the experience of that at some point. All right. So tell us a little more about acceptance and commitment therapy. We have this mindfulness piece, this piece about bringing curiosity to the moment. And, that's mindfulness is like this placing our attention in the present moment with an attitude of kindness and curiosity, right? So that's accepting what is here. So we've got this acceptance piece. What else is there?
Yeah. Well, the overall goal of ACT is psychological flexibility. And so
Mm,
what that means is our ability to show up to the this present moment with everything in it, and do what matters. And then the practice of ACT is different skills to be able to build that psychological flexibility. And so, of course, that the scaffolding is the mindfulness because you can't change anything until you're first aware of what you're experiencing.
mhm,
And then the acceptance piece we've talked about. And I think it's important to clarify when we talk about acceptance, we're talking about acceptance of internal experiences, physical sensations, emotions, urges. We're not talking about like, if you're in an abusive relationship, just accept that your partner is beating you up, right? Like that is
Yeah.
not what we mean when we talk about acceptance. But what we would be talking about is when you have anxiety around that situation, can you learn to make space for that anxiety rather than having it dictate your choices? So that's acceptance. Um, Another piece of it is called diffusion, and this is related to our thoughts. And it's called many things in many different kinds of traditions and practices, decentering, but it's the idea that we become an observer of our thoughts rather than getting, fused or sort of hooked by them. So, can I step back and notice what my mind is saying and then choose how to respond? If I listen to this thought, it's not saying all thoughts are bad, but it's if I listen to this thought, is it going to move me in the direction of the person I want to be or the life that I want to have? So, like if the thought is saying, hey, your rent is due tomorrow, that's a thought you want to listen to, assuming you care about keeping a roof over your head. But if the thought is saying, like, Jill, you're so boring, you should definitely not be on the Mindful Mama podcast because you have nothing valuable to offer the world. But like my values are around sharing act, then that's one that I want to be able to like observe and kind of say like, okay, thank you, mind, I get that, like, you're trying to protect me from failing and humiliating myself, but I'm going to choose to move forward in this action anyway because it matters to me.
Mhm.
And there's different skills for willingness, for diffusion. Um, and then the big piece is really getting clear on your values, the me you want to be in each moment. And then what are the actions that you're going to take? The committed actions is what it's called, an act to move you in those directions.
Mm.
And that's like pretty much it in a nutshell. There's another piece called self as context, which really is about the observing self that we talked about. It's pretty similar to diffusion, but it's overall changing your relationship to thoughts and feelings. So they used to push you around and bully you into probably spending too much time in the comfort zone. Can you change your relationship to them so you're observing them and making space for them and then making choices to move in the directions that give you the life you want and make you the person that you most want to be.
Mm. I love this. And this is definitely a lot of overlap with mindfulness training in so many ways, and awareness
Mhm.
training, and but that piece about like the values, I think, is so important, kind of defining what's important to you. And do you find that a lot of us, I guess, probably think that we kind of we think we have certain values sort of by default, but do you walk people through a process of defining those values?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think there's a lot of almost like misunderstanding around what values are. Like people think of values as like morals, and that can be part of it. Um, but really, what they are, it's like partly about what you do, but it's really about how you do it. It's the qualities that you embody as you walk through the world and embody the roles that matter to you. So, like, you might say, I value parenting, but parenting is like a value domain. We have domains of like family, friendship, romantic relationship, parenting, etc. It's like underneath that domain, when you are in the role of mom or dad, when I'm in the role of mom, what qualities do I want to embody? Is it patience? Is it being loving, generous, kind, firm? Um, and your values stay the same, but those you choose to kind of like embrace and embody in the moment will depend on the context.
Yeah.
Because my values, if I see a stranger try to kidnap my child, are going to be different than those when I'm reading my son a bedtime story.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just had this conversation. I was doing a mindful parenting teacher training session before this, and we were talking about the value of kindness. And from like the outward point of view, one might think like kindness may mean like, oh, that means I I play when my kid asks me to play hide and go seek, I play hide and go seek because that's kind. And that may be one of the interpretations of it, but in a different context, if kindness could be I am feeling really tired in myself. I'm so exhausted. And to be kind to myself, I'm holding a boundary
Right.
around playing hide and go seek right now, unless I can go hide by like lying under the covers in the bed. So that is the same value, but that context is incredibly different, of course.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect example. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I love this. I've been really fascinated by ACT and ACT as I've heard about it and learned about it, and I'm glad you were able to explain it to us so beautifully. Um, Jill, I think it's been fabulous talking to you. I've really enjoyed everything you've had to say and the really clear and down to earth way you say it. Where can people find out more about you and what you're doing in the world?
Sure. Well, everything is on my website at jillstoddard.com. And if anybody wants to like learn more about ACT or practice ACT on their own, I have a book called Be Mighty, and it's a book for women with anxiety and worry and stress. And that's an ACT self-help book, basically. So you really like learn this much more in depth and how to apply it. But on my website, you can find, I think my blog is there and my books are there. My podcast is Psychologists Off the Clock, which is we do like all sorts of topics in psychology, but it's predominantly ACT based topics. So that's a good place for people to learn more too.
Well, thank you so much for stepping out of your comfort zone and coming onto the podcast and also sharing your voice with the world with your book and your TED Talk and all the things you're doing. I really appreciate your voice and what you've shared. Thank you.
Thanks, Hunter. Thanks so much for having me. It was fun.
I love how her whole story about the goal of parenting. It really, really strikes me. It's such an important wake up for me anyway. I hope it is for you. That whole message to that this is the journey, and yeah, the journey is hard and it's uncomfortable, and we got to build that our tolerance to lean into that. Of course, this is the work we do in mindful parenting. So if you're ready to take it deeper, ready to take it beyond the podcast, go to mindfulparentingcourse.com and get on the wait list. I'd love to work with you personally, meet you personally on our Zoom calls. We offer 36 hours of live parent coaching every year, which is amazing. So if you're interested, mindfulparentingcourse.com, get on the wait list. And I hope this has been helpful for you today. I hope it's watered your good seeds. I hope it's helped you lean into the joy and the challenges of this life. It's not easy, but this is why we are here, why you're here listening, why I'm here doing this, why we share these amazing resources with our friends. We help each other out as best we can. And I'm wishing you a beautiful week. I'm wishing you peace. I'm wishing you things to notice and appreciate and good night's sleep and all of those good things. And I cannot wait to talk to you again next week. Thank you so much again for listening. Namaste.
I'd say definitely do it. It's really helpful. It will change your relationship with your kids for the better. It will help you communicate better. And I'd say communicate better as a person, as a wife, as a spouse. It's been really a positive influence in our lives. So definitely do it.
I'd say definitely do it. It's so worth it. The money really is inconsequential when you get so much benefit from being a better parent to your children and feeling like you're connecting more with them and not feeling like you're yelling all the time or you're like, why isn't things working? I would say definitely do it. It's so worth it. It'll change you.
No matter what age someone's child is, it's a great opportunity for personal growth and it's a great investment in someone's family. I'm very thankful I had this.
You can continue in your old habits that aren't working, or you can learn some new tools and gain some perspective to shift everything in your parenting.
Are you frustrated by parenting? Do you listen to the experts and try all the tips and strategies, but you're just not seeing the results that you want? Or are you lost as to where to start? Does it all seem so overwhelming with too much to learn? Are you yearning for a community of people who get it, who also don't want to threaten and punish to create cooperation? Hi, I'm Hunter Clark-Fields, and if you answered yes to any of these questions, I want you to seriously consider the Mindful Parenting membership. You'll be joining hundreds of members who have discovered the path of mindful parenting and now have confidence and clarity in their parenting. This isn't just another parenting class. This is an opportunity to really discover your unique, lasting relationship, not only with your children, but with yourself. It will translate into lasting, connected relationships, not only with your children, but your partner too. Let me change your life. Go to mindfulparentingcourse.com to add your name to the waitlist, so you will be the first to be notified when I open the membership for enrollment. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. mindfulparentingcourse.com.